Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to a brand new video and something a bit different here today, and I'm going to bring you some F1 2018 game ideas. So we're going to delve straight into it. I know this video might get viewed by co-masters or maybe not, so first of all, small disclaimer, some of these do feature in both Arav and Ben's videos. Now I do urge you to go watch those two first before coming back to this one, because there's so many ideas in those alone. So really I'm just sort of adding to these, giving my sort of opinions and also bringing some ideas of my own to the table. So we're going to break this into two main areas, career mode and online. Now the first thing I'm going to say is a point separate to both of these. So before we delve into these two particular points, there's one thing I do want to stress, and that is game optimization. It's been a while now since F1's been on the next gen consoles, and really at this point there's still a lot of bugs and issues. Now I can't speak on the console side, but I can speak on the PC side of things. And on the PC, pretty much to run F1 in decent, to pretty much max settings, you need a supercomputer based off of what the game is asking you to do. Now, that isn't really, in my mind, what's right for a game like Formula 1, because even though I can understand that it might be a demanding game in terms of frame rate, it shouldn't be graphically, because I can play games like GTA with my computer and run the same sort of graphics. It's not really down to my PC struggling, because my computer is pretty good. I would go on about the specs, but I don't think that's relevant. My computers should be good enough to run F1 to the point where Nvidia Shadowplay asked me to run Ultra on everything, and I can't do that. So that's when you know there's a problem. So I do think trying to optimize the game to the best it possibly can be is very, very crucial to try and iron out any sort of consistent bugs in the game, which, in my case is consistent screen freezing, whether it's in weather transitions, in the wet, or online racing. But now we're going to delve into the 2 points, starting off with career mode. Now, first of all, small disclaimer, I'm very happy with career mode. I think, in F1 2017 was really, really good, but there is room for improvement, as there always will be. So the first thing is going to be make the AI better for racing and strategy. What I mean by this is, for example, in F1 2017, to this day, you can still have a race to the point where if it starts raining and there's one lap left to go, the AI will probably come in for intermediates, or vice versa, stay out on dries when it's so obvious to come into for intermediates. One or the other basically, and they'll throw away a race and potentially give it to me or anyone who's racing in that scenario. So for example, say if the rain comes down, the AI has scheduled the pit on, say, lap 25 of a career mode race, but on lap 26 it's going to be intermediates. The AI is still coming regardless. Or for example, the AI, when one driver pits, their teammate stays out for one more lap. So what happens is that teammate, he's got a great opportunity to go for the intermediates. At least he can maybe make the right call, but even still, he goes for the dry tyres in a situation where it's obviously intermediates, and that needs to be fixed, in my opinion, to make the racing just realistic at this point, because even though it gives you a good result, in hindsight, it makes absolutely zero sense strategy-wise. The next point, and continuing on with this AI intelligence sort of path I'm going on at the minute, there has to be an option in the game where we tell our team or our teammates somehow that the pit box is free for them. Because, for example, if I'm scheduled to pit on lap 7, for example, but I could take my tyres 2 more laps, my teammate won't actually come in if he's behind me. Even if he's in front of me, he won't come in. What he will do is he will stay out those 2 laps and 1 more until after I've pitted. And that messes up his race, because he is still going to commit to doing the strategy that he had predetermined for him in that race. So it makes absolutely no sense, and all I'm doing is throwing away the race to my teammate. So when I've got a scheduled pit stop lap, it should always be good to maybe confirm to the engineer whether I do want to come in or whether I don't. Because if I don't, then I can leave the option open to my teammate to actually come in, and that way get the best result for us as a team. Now on to more interesting things, and Arif made a big reference to this, and me and him talk about this a lot, because obviously we're still grinding out career mode videos pretty much on a daily basis, give or take. Arif mentioned in his video, I'm going to mention in this one, that AI have to be better with the R&D, especially the R&D has to be more random. So what we mean by this is, at the moment in both of our respective career modes, I think even Ben's really, the only teams that are improving are the ones that we race for, so the AI aren't really making big strides. In F1 2016, to be fair, there were those sort of weird changes in the pecking order, but in F1 2016, if you look at the standings in my constructors, they're exactly the same as what you can maybe see in real life, with the exception of Ferrari absolutely dominating. So there's not enough variation there. I'd love to see Sauber become a really solid midfield runner, yet they're still really far behind in last place, and these sort of things are just really frustrating. The only teams that have improved, like I said, are the ones that I've driven for, so that is something that needs to be improved in next year's game. Also, adding on to that, and once again something that Arav mentioned in his video, R&D has to be reset after X amount of seasons, whether it's 2, 3, even 5, I don't really care, but it's got to be reset in a way to shuffle the pack, i.e. sort of replicating a regulation change in real life, because every 5 years in Formula 1, pretty much, we have a reg change, whether it's engines or aero, and the performance gets shuffled about. Like this year, for example, with the really fast tyres we're going to have, the lap times are going to drop by like 2 seconds anyway, so we need that sort of variation in the R&D to really make it interesting. And the reset is good because, you know, you could have, for example, in the first half of your career mode, have Force India go from 4th place to the best team in the grid. But with the R&D reshuffle, everyone goes back to square one, and maybe then you might see Sauber pull through and really make a big challenge for it, you know, and it would make it really, really interesting to see how the grid would shift in in a matter of seasons. Adding on to this, I think something that's going to be really cool, and I'm going to sort of merge a few of these points I've got written down in my notes into one, would be cutscenes, interviews, and then also a storyline element, driver relationships, having bad blood, and all these sort of things. So, for example, say if you know, in F1, the rule of thumb is to beat your teammate. And, you know, why not script into career mode that you can have maybe a good relationship or a bad one? So, for example, say if you start beating him quite comfortably, he might react really well and just say, you know what, fair play to you, you're doing really well. You know, have some cutscenes where, like, maybe, you know, you have a laugh, you get on well, or maybe he starts falling out, so you don't look eye to eye, or maybe you brush shoulders, or you hit your shoulder, for example, and you sort of the drivers give themselves a bad look. All these sort of things that, you know, add something to the career mode, add a sense of emotion, personality, and feel. I think it's definitely something that is desperately needed. You know, take a page out of the journey in FIFA 17, when Alex and his friend fall out, you know, you can sort of replicate that in a way maybe in the game, try and do different sort of scenarios. So, you know, maybe you can have a fallout route, maybe a bonding route, and also bond with other drivers. So, for example, Alonso and, for example, Sainz tend to get on very well because they're from the same country. So try and bring those sort of elements into career mode and really make a live the life feel, if you like, and, you know, really get that sort of immersion feel and personality in there. Now, in terms of the next point, I think this is going to really make it interesting, and I'm adding on to what Arav mentioned in his video, which is regarding contracts. So you should be able to ask when you want to leave a team. Arav made a very good, you know, explanation of this in his video, so I do urge you to go watch it, and he explained in very good detail. All I would say to this and add to this is, for example, adding the possibility you can get dropped. I understand you can get fired in career mode, but you have to try your absolute hardest to get sacked, and that will happen by Silverstone anyway, which is 10 races of you driving on purpose to crash. For example, take a page out of Kvyat's book, a one-off situation, you know, like a spanner in the works. You could be driving for Renault, for example, and you have one bad race, or you have a crash with your teammate, which once again goes in line with the storyline aspect. Say if you have a crash with your teammate, you will lose so many points in the experience and also the team reputation. You might just happen to get sacked, or the team might say, for example, right, because of what you've done and because of what the issue you've committed, then in the next race, if you don't get a top 10 finish, you're sacked. And, you know, really sort of give it a bit of a left field sort of different feel, you know, really try and throw it out there more. And it doesn't have to be a sacking for the next race. It could be, for example, after what you've just done today, you're no longer required for next season, so you can see out your contract this year and then you've got to move on. For example, you know, really just throw the elements in there and give it a different sense, you know, instead of just every season at Silverstone or Abu Dhabi getting Emma to tell you what contracts you have available to you. Really sort of open it up a bit and make it different. In my opinion, something I want to see is bring back the select title rival. So in F1 2010, when you were going for the championship or not, you know, you could be going for like 4th place or whatever, you could actually select a rival. The same way you get given a rival now in F1 2017, you know, before, apart from having that sort of, you know, neck to neck rival you can have, you can actually select a rival to race to the end of the championship. So he would be like an objective. And also personally, maybe it's just a thing I noticed, but I definitely felt that when you selected this driver, the driver's performance, the AI would be improved by like 2 or 3%, and they would just be that extra bit more competitive and make it a bit harder. And I really, really liked that aspect of it because you had the team goals in mind and what you want to personally do. And also you had a new target of actually beating the rival that you had. And this this target was really tough, and it was one that, I don't know why it had a different feeling to the one we have now in F1 2017, because this was only an end of season target. And who knows, to really make this like a thing in the game in F1 2018, for example, add on incentives. For example, say if you beat him by X amount of points, then you will get X reward. For example, you could get extra resource points, for example. Or, reverse it. If you lose the rivalry and you don't beat him, then you will lose resource points, or the team expectation will go down, or once again, tie it back into what I said before, where maybe the team might give you an ultimatum. In terms of classic content, I would say add non-classic tracks to the classic content. So for example, when we do the classic events in career mode, I've already mentioned the great idea about the whole reshuffling the resource point system, and I completely agree with him on that. But also, don't just do the tracks that we do on the calendar anyway. Do different tracks. I know this might be in the works for this year's game. I mean, I might be getting ahead of myself, but I do remember a few tweets last year, and Lee made the sort of teasing it anyway. But, Imola is the real tracks that we've already seen in F1 2013, but also add a few more. For example, maybe add the Nürburgring, which we haven't seen in F1. It's not really a classic track, but it's one that doesn't get raced in F1 anymore. Different circuits to really throw it out there and make it a different experience, and genuinely get that breakaway feel from career mode when you're racing around circuits that you don't race in F1, actual F1 cars on, because even though it is a break drive in the classic cars, you're still driving on the actual tracks, so therefore there's still a connection there. Whereas if you had the non-current F1 tracks, the disconnection and also the feeling of something different would become far more appealing and apparent. I still think more customization is a big factor in career mode. I think you should be able to, apart from selecting your number, I think you should be able to design this. I think Arav mentioned this as well, and also I think Ben might have done as well. But genuinely design the number. So if you take a page out of MotoGP, every driver has their custom number. And for example, everybody's familiar with Valentino Rossi's famous fluorescent yellow 46, which has been, the same for 20 years. And, these sort of things where they get associated to a driver and they resonate with him and become familiar with their fans. So I think this is definitely something that needs to be explored. I think helmets need to be really improved. And it's just the small details. Like, for example, if you drive a Mercedes in career mode, Hamilton's number is red. Bottas's number is like a light blue this year. So why not? If you're driving for Mercedes, maybe choose and have like a yellow color number, maybe, or black, or just simply white. It's all these little details that F1 fans really appreciate, which will add a real sense of personality to the career mode. Another thing important for me personally, pit stops in qualifying. That needs to be a thing. I understand it might be hard to implement. I think Ben mentioned this. It was quite hard. It's something quite tricky to really put into the game. But, there are those tracks where you want to try and get an extra run in, and the whole sequence of driving the in lap, going to the pit lane, putting the tyre blankets on, getting pushed in, getting the monitor pulled down, and then undoing all of that to get back on the track, it's really pointless, and it would really make it really, really good for career mode and also for online as well, which I'll get into in a moment, because that would make league racers actually have the opportunity to do an extra stint. And also, I believe they've got, I believe this hasn't been fixed yet. Don't quote me on this, but I believe they only have a 12-minute short qualifying when I think they've been asking for 18 for ages because of the whole tyre blankets issue in the whole pit lane situation where it just takes too long. So there's not enough time to get 3 runs in. So, maybe look into that avenue and really try and put it in there, because it's something that would help both career mode and online racers alike. And finally, one last point. It's a pet peeve of mine, but something that I think is a nice detail, and I think I would really appreciate if it could be put into the game. I don't know if I'm the only person that thinks this, but in the car setup, I would like to have the return of being able to select the engine mode you're driving in. I don't know what game it was, but I think up until about 2012 or 2013, before the V6s came in, or even 2014 maybe, in the setup menu, you could actually choose your engine mode you go out on. So for example, because the engine element now in F1 2017 has become such a big thing, and it's so important, especially going into F1 2018 where there's only 3 power units. For example, when I do the track acclimatization, I drive the car in lean mix, but I don't actually drive out from the pit lane. I go straight to the flying lap because obviously, I don't have loads of time to do the outlap manually all the time. So I do the flying lap, but I don't want to do that outlap in standard mix, for example. I'd rather do it in lean and not have to wear out my other engine components. Same logic applies, for example, in Q1. In Q1, I rarely use max. I always use rich mix to save that extra bit of engine power. And it's all these little details, because all the in laps and out laps, which are simulated when you skip it, is those sort of laps where you get extra wear added onto the engine, which you can't control. So at least if you have the possibility of adding in the engine mix, then at least you have a bit more control in that particular aspect. But overall, that's going to wrap it up for career mode, and now we're going to jump into online. Now, this one is a bit more tricky for me because I don't play online a lot. I would love to play it more, but right now my internet isn't very good, and the F1 game with the server situation online isn't making it any easier for me. The last time I played online on F1, if you take away co-op with Arab, which is only with one person and I still get a lot of lag, was when I tried for the esports event, and even then I couldn't race because I was lagging far too much. So we're going to delve into it. The first thing for me is servers are a must. I would happily pay for an online server on F1, and I don't even league race. If there was actual servers that I paid for, I guarantee everyone in the community would chime in, especially, AOR and any other leagues that, want to become genuine and really want to have that good racing. I'm pretty sure anyone would put, like, for example, a bit of money towards it between all the people that take part in the league. In my case, I would happily return to league racing, and I genuinely would give it a good go if this was a thing, because I would happily pay for a server and help out so I can actually race people competitively online, because that's something that I've just had to give up on in the last 3 or 4 years because I simply cannot do it. At the end of the day, if you have to pay, I don't think that's a major issue. I think people now are getting to a point where they're just so desperate to have a good online experience, I think they'd be willing to pay for a server. Obviously, because of the rise of esports in the last year, online perfection is more important than ever, and this is where I think I can understand if they don't want to focus on career mode this year, because online really needs a lot of work, and the esports situation is making it basically forced upon, especially because the guys in Liberty Media hinted at there would be maybe more than one esports event per year. I'm guessing co-masters already know this, and they might know more than I do, but for those of you who don't know who are watching this video, it looks like there might be more than one esports event a year on the same game. Therefore, that game has to be ready, esports ready, if you like. And what does this exactly entail? Well, pretty much getting the basics right. Like I said, if there is servers, it would remove 95% of the problem. And then the rest of it, in my opinion, is general bugs, game performance and optimization, because the core gameplay on F1, if you play time trial or Grand Prix mode, is decent. So there is no complaints there. So it's just a question of really getting the servers in, because that would remove most of the issue. And like I said, the rest of it is iron out general game bugs. Now, in terms of the next 2 points, one's a bit more vague, but I'm going to go into that one first. It is they need to restructure the offering to the player in terms of game modes. So for example, sprint mode isn't necessarily a official game mode in the game, so that needs to be fixed in my opinion. Not fixed, but that has to be put in the game, because sprint mode is such a popular game mode. It's one that I've always played back in 2010, 2011. It's a game mode that you can just hop on when you've got 5 minutes and just really have a blast. And it's very complicated because we still have the hopper system, and getting to lobbies is still pretty tricky, and there are just generally a lot of bugs and lag which prevent it from really becoming what people want it to be in terms of an experience. I think other gamers, Ben made a really good point on this, and a lot of good ideas in terms of maybe an elimination, game mode, where obviously this is like back in the day, like for example Need for Speed, you do a 5-lap race, and whoever's at the back, or the last 2 cars who are last, get eliminated. So it's like a race to not be in the last positions. Really try and give some diversity to game modes and really make it different for the player, and add some genuine fun game modes. Like Ben also said it as well, a survival game mode maybe, where the damage is like turn up to 1,000, and you just want to make sure you don't obviously hit anybody, and it's the last car to survive. Maybe try and do some sort of demolition derby, like an actual demolition derby, just shut off like an F1 circuit, just restricted to a certain area, and obviously players can try and hide and sort of hide and seek and hit cars when necessary and try to survive. And overall there's generally lots of game modes. However, the one I really want to see, and I want to see a lot of focus on this, and this is just a personal preference of mine, but I think it's been overlooked for far too long, is co-op. Now, this was they first did this in 2011, and since then it hasn't really had any attention, in my opinion, and it has been dropped for some years now as an actual game mode. I do co-op every year, if not twice a year, as a YouTube series on my channel. I personally love a co-op career mode or championship, because it's a lot of fun. You race with a friend and you try to, to push each other and also try and beat your goals. Now, in terms of what I think co-op could really bring to the table for an F1 game is massive. If the online is stable, you can have a lot of fun in the game mode, which is one of the reasons why I'm not having fun doing co-op at times, because of the lag. But if it is good, you can make this very, very interesting. So, for example, you can implement loads of elements from career mode, like, for example, combined R&D. So you and your teammate work together to try and improve the cars you're driving. Actually have a first driver and second driver. So, for example, you two are genuinely competing for the rights to be the top dog in the team, and also the first driver gets preference on the upgrades, or not preference, he gets first choice on the upgrades, so they'll arrive to him first. So there's pressure on the second driver to try and pull it back and really try and get that sense of competitiveness between the two drivers, whilst also trying to get the team spirit up altogether. And overall, set some team targets, individual targets, and also, why not? It is a carp career mode in a sense, so maybe you can get fired. Maybe not me, but maybe, for example, my teammate might get fired. Why not? And he has to go to another team. So it's still a co-op. Like, for example, what me and Ara are doing. I'm driving for Red Bull. Ara's driving for Ferrari. So really get the different aspects in there. Really make it unpredictable and fun. And genuinely a game where that people can enjoy. For example, two best mates can just hop on and really try and grind it out, make it a really interesting game mode. Also, for example, maybe add in fancy contracts, so for example, say if you've had a really good season and you're the #1 driver, and at the halfway point of the season you've been smashing your teammate, maybe you can get like a special contract or a raise of sorts when you get maybe extra R&D points compared to your teammates, so you can upgrade faster in your side of the garage, and all these little things that can really make career mode, or should I say co-op career mode, it could make it a genuinely good game mode. I'd even say maybe some cutscenes if that's possible. Maybe exchange words via, for example, even if it was just the old F1 2010 and F1 2011 sort of interviewing system where you had 3 options and you pick. So you could actually maybe do that and talk about your teammate in a good or a bad way, or both of you together talk about the positiveness in the teams. There's loads of different options and avenues you can explore with this, but I genuinely think Harp has been overlooked for far too long, and there's a lot of potential for it as a game mode. But overall, I'm not going to ramble on for too much longer, and I'm going to try and keep this quite, tight and concise and sort of a bullet points pretty much video. But if you guys have enjoyed it, then please do leave a like on the video. Let's try and smash the like button, and let me know in the comments down below what you guys want to see in F1 2018. Any good ideas are appreciated in the comment section down below. But other than that, guys, hopefully you have enjoyed it. Hopefully, Codemasters, if you are watching, then you take some of this on board. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I think there's a lot of good stuff here. And also, like I said, both Arav and Ben's videos are really, really good and informative. But other than that, guys, if you have missed any of the 2 videos on screen right now, then I do urge you to go check those out if you have missed them by chance. And other than that, thanks for watching. I'll see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.